He's super responsible and can remember things. Oh, and plans to come to class. I know you plan to come to class because I would notice that you were missing, right? Yeah. I once actually no, it was ME3820. There was a kid that was in the class and he had been one of my PLAs for 4 years. And he always wore something red. Like it was usually like a WPI t-shirt or sweatshirt or something. Like he was on the track team, so he'd have like his WPI track sweatshirts on. But there was never a day that he didn't wear red. Never saw him without having red clothes on. And did I mention I'd known him for 4 years? Yeah, he skipped class all the time. And his excuse was I'm working on my MQP. And we had the final exam was actually an oral final exam. And we all sat in the classroom. We sat in a big circle. And everybody in the class had an assignment where they had to create a final exam question and an answer and submit that to me. And then I went through asking the questions, but not to the person who created it. And we had a then class discussion to come up with. And that was the first hour of the class. Then the second hour of the class was pizza party because I wanted people to fill out their course evaluation forms. And I have found that you get better evaluations if you provide pizza when people are filling out the forms. Yeah. He showed up for the pizza party. He showed up like, I don't know, 10 minutes before the end of the oral exam part of the day. Because we made him sit in the center. He was the only person that term that didn't get an A in the class, which is pretty sad. Come on in. Perfect. All right, so are we sitting with our groups? Can the groups identify somehow? Yeah, hold up the number of fingers to identify your group. All right, this is 4, 2, 3, 1. And that's how many groups we had, right? So each group is represented. I was a little bit nervous that like one of the groups would have nobody show up. Who's got the smallest group today? You have 3 people? You guys have a lot. You have 4 people. You have 5 people. All right, so there's a couple people not here. Have you guys all made contact with your group members? Do you know how to reach out to people? So as we get to the group discussion-y part of the time, where I'm asking you to discuss with your group, figure out how to get them involved in the conversation, whether it's via text or chat or something like that, if you can. Not everybody will necessarily be here. But okay. So as I was saying when I was setting up, the first time I did this format for this class was last year this time. And I let the groups willy-nilly decide what they wanted to do. And they had to be able to, and actually what we did in this class when they did their first group presentation was them presenting to the rest of the class, this is the project that our group decided to do, and this is why this project fulfills the class. This is why this is a valid project for the class. And not all the projects were created equal. And I suppose that's okay, because, I mean, not everything is the same. But it's computer manufacturing, right? Yeah, so there was one project group that at the end, they were making some simple 2-dimensional parts. I mean, they had thickness, but it was 2D milling kind of parts for all of their stuff. And there's pin joints and stuff that go together. And they screwed it up. And they wanted to demonstrate on the last class, they wanted to demonstrate their mechanism functioning. And so the night before, they went to the bandsaw and they whittled out some parts with the bandsaw. It's like, carving with a knife. And they may have gotten away with that if they had cleaned up the bandsaw when they were done. But I came in to get ready for class, and I walk past, you know where my office is, right? You walk past 2 bandsaws on the way to my office. And so I walked in, and there was just little bits of part and sawdust and little bits of part all over. And I could see from the little bits that were left over what the part that they kept probably looked like. And I knew which group it was when I walked by. And so, it's important for us to do something that actually adds value to us. I don't believe that they needed to have taken the class to be able to use the bandsaw to whittle their parts. And that was disappointing. So I want to have some more group discussion today to figure out exactly what the groups want to do for their project, because the project is most of the grade, right? I say participation is most of the grade, but the participation is, are you participating in your project and are you presenting it well to your classmates? So the project really is the grade. And so the project needs to involve computer-aided manufacturing and allow you as a group to stretch your knowledge, right? If all you do is stuff that you already could do, it's kind of a waste of time for everybody. Is that true? So what I'd like you to do in your groups right now is and maybe you've already done this, and if you have, that's great. But in your groups right now, have a quick discussion of what you think your group would like to do to demonstrate that you learned about computer-aided manufacturing and stretched your knowledge for the class. So it should be, you can talk about stuff, I don't know how to do XYZ, and I want to learn how to do that, and it involves computer-aided manufacturing. And so that can be sort of the premise, right? So I think in the quizzes we did at the beginning, a lot of people wanted to do more CNC, but more complex CNC geometries. And that was what I got out of that survey that we did at the beginning. But specifically as a group, come up with something that you think you could do that would demonstrate that you learned some of that. And so I'd like you guys to take, let's do 5 minutes right now just to get some basic idea flow, and then we'll have the groups report back, this is what we're thinking, and we'll discuss this together as a class. And the project could be that some classes do, the entire class does one project, but it's broken up into different sections and different groups do different parts of that. So we could come up with something like that. I think that might work better than, I keep doing this when I talk about the bandsaw project, because their project was to make a can crusher. So a device that you could put your empty beer can in and crush it, which I just don't understand in Massachusetts, because that can was worth 5 cents before you crushed it. So I guess it's rich kids that want to crush their cans. Back when I was a kid, we recycled our aluminum. We didn't get 5 cents for it. So crushing it was better. You could fit more in the bag when you brought down to the place. Yes. Maybe they were doubling down and they were designing that in their other class, and then, yeah, because they did use a 4-bar linkage. I would give them that. But there was varying quality there, and I think I want to have the projects be exciting. I want to have it be so that I want to get out of bed in the morning and come in and see your presentation when you're talking about your projects. And I've advised dozens of MQPs, and I have been involved with thousands of MQPs. And the only ones that are ever any good are the ones where the people are excited to do the project. And I think that carries to all levels of project. You have to be jumping out of bed saying, I get to do my project today, not, oh shit, I got to do some work on my project today, right? So let's take what I said, 5 minutes. Let's do 5 minutes, then have each of the groups report back on, I guess the first question is, do we want to do like a class-wide project, or does the group want to do an individual project themselves? And we'll debate that a little bit in the class. We'll come to a consensus. But also, if there's one thing that you're going to learn in class, what's the one thing that you want to demonstrate that you got better at in class? All right. So 5 minutes. So we'll do 7 minutes at 9:25. We'll reconvene. And so if you're watching from home, if you're not here, if you can get in contact with your group, if you've traded cell phone or text or something like that, just to participate. So I do have one thought. Is it would be cool for me if whatever the project or projects are, if it added some value to WPI as a legacy after the class was over. Right? It'd be cool if we did something that could continue to exist when it was done. But keep talking. I shouldn't have thrown that out there, or I should have said it at the beginning. I just remembered though. A tray where you could throw a random assortment of drill bits, and then they would get sorted automatically and get put away. I've got a 6-axis robot that's not being used. You guys could have that for your project, and it could pick and place those drill bits. And you just have to figure out a way to figure out how big they were, and which. We could also hire a sniper to stand by the drill cases. So 2 more minutes, we'll reconvene. There was somebody that said they wanted to do EDM on their thing. Might have been you. I like the idea of EDM because I am not the key operator. Somebody else had it. All right, we got 1 minute. If each group could sort of figure out a concise way to report back what it was you've been talking about in the next minute, that'd be great. All right, where's group one? You guys are group one? All right, you get to go first. I put the little hat on it so you should know which end to talk to. Yeah, you're good to go. So what are you guys thinking? Can you summarize your discussion?
Getting the design requirements and the functional things that we need to hammered out. So I would argue for multiple smaller projects that have other groups for we're curious about like the actual history, pieces of tolerance about everybody. Complex geometry, reactors, and like to do something wire EDM, so something functional that matters, like running fit for years or whatever. One idea that we're starting with is maybe more complicated.
I'm not sure I could spell manometer, but it is fun to say. Do. Group two. Can you?
I don't know about that throw. I don't want to throw.
Group two. What are you guys thinking? Because we're all just a little bit ADHD, right? I think that's true. I get to fidget with markers and stuff. I get to throw microphones. What are your thoughts on individual group projects versus one big project that everybody tries to contribute on? So it could be a fidget competition at the end and see which group makes the best fidget toy. All right. Yeah, so I actually advised an MQP that was all about making fidget toys, and they did a whole bunch of research. And when they started the MQP, they said that what we want to do is we want to design and bring to manufacture a commercial product. That was the initial meeting. And so they said, we're going to go figure out what it is we want to do. That's what MQPs do. They came back. They're like, all right, so we're going to make a fidget toy. I'm like, oh my God, what a stupid idea. I didn't say that out loud, but that's what I was thinking in the meeting. I'm like, oh, come on, really? I thought we were going to have a good MQP here. And then that was the best MQP I've ever advised. I've had prize winning MQPs, but like across the board, the best one. And you know what they said though, that changed my mind right away? Well, this group over here just did a $2.6 million Kickstarter. They just sold $2.6 million worth of fidget toys, and they haven't even made one yet. Right? And so they actually got a patent on their fidget toy, and they licensed it for manufacturing. So pretty cool. It was a whole bunch of different claims on it. I shouldn't say they did the provisional patent. Nobody ever bothered to pay for the real patent, but it was fun for the provisional patent. There was no reason to pay for the real patent. Because a patent is only worth what you're willing to spend to defend it. And it's too easy to get ripped off on something like that. But part of it was the different texture changes. It had a bunch of different devices on it. It's a pretty cool tool. Pretty cool toy. Where's group 3? In group 4. Where's group 4? Want to do the throw or? Perfect. If it breaks, I'll just get the school to buy me a new one, right?
We have similar thoughts in terms of like, things that we want to learn in the class as everyone else, doctors and all that. In terms of the group project thing, we also had similar concerns about like the feasibility of like coordinating across the entire class and all that sort of stuff. This is what I think could be cool. And then just in terms of like the only real idea we have with something that is that in terms of like making interesting pieces and stuff is like making a walk. Could be interesting. But,
All right, so I think we have group 3 was the only group that was open to a larger sort of consolidated group project. You get your group 3, right? I'll take the mic back. Have you ever done a class that did one of those? Has anybody else ever been in a class that did one consolidated group project? You guys did one together. Which one was it? 4320. And what was your group project? The elevator company project. Okay. Yeah, that class has done several different projects over the years, but it was the elevator project. Was it successful? Okay. What were the trials and tribulations of having it be the big class project? The benefit is you have a lot of people. The problem is you have a lot of people, right? So I've never participated in one. I've only observed them from outside, and from my observations, it tended to appear that it was not going to be successful. But and I think I think everybody's grasped the idea. That's really hard to manage. So I think it falls to the professor to micromanage some of the groups. Did you guys get micromanaged a little bit? Okay. Yeah. Was there a group in the class that was devoted to project management? That I think there should be. I actually think with these large MQPs too, when you get like 15 people on an MQP, some of those people should be from the School of Management, and their job should be to project manage the MQP. But I hardly ever see that happen in reality. Well, yeah, but their research is about how to manage, right? Their degree requirement is to be able to manage things, because it's the School of Management, right? The School of Business Management degree. Anyway, all right. So I think you're the fidget people. You're the fidgety people. I mean, I'm sitting up here doing this with my two markers, right? We all understand fidgeting. And you wanted a high tolerance part, and everybody wanted some more complex tool paths. Is that true? So what I didn't like about your fidget idea was a few weeks doing CAD. You did. You said a couple weeks. The class may have noticed my facial expression when you said that, but I held it in. I didn't say it what I was thinking at that moment. But I do think we want to. All right. So CAD is computer-aided manufacturing, right? The CAD part of it is the computer aiding in the manufacturing. It's not really the part that gets me excited. So that's part of my hesitation there. And there's all kinds of classes at WPI that focus on CAD. So I think that a shorter amount of time devoted to the CAD part of it. And I think that's with my Can Crusher example. They spent way too much time on the design side of it and not enough time on the implementation side. That was their biggest problem. I mean, the other thing I didn't like about that was that they were all 2D parts. Or they were all parts that they should have been able to make the day they walked into the class. So there was that. But I do kind of like the idea of sort of a group by group competition. And it could be something along the lines of the fidget toys. I like your idea of being able to make the high tolerance parts. And manometer is a fun word to say. But what do we think? So if we did, so the fidget toys, which group you guys have the lock? The lock. Then I know student projects that are especially the really hard to make. We have really complex tool paths. some high tolerance parts, I think, are cool. What are the kind of things? Is there an idea for a fidgety toy that would have some high tolerance needs? Yeah, you can. Yep. So it could be something with gears that interact. Yep. I should turn this back on and turn it over so everybody can hear what you say. We manufacture bearings. We make the balls and everything in the bearing races. So they typically are manufactured at high volume. Worcester that makes bearings. Do a class trip out to look at bearing manufacturing. I would tend to say that's probably bearing races and bearings. You do a lot of grinding, things like that. We don't have a lot of good tooling at WPI to do that kind of work. But we could go visit a bearing manufacturing facility, I bet. But if we were doing stuff that that required using bearings, so making the hole that the bearing presses into, it is very easy to make that hole the wrong size and have the bearing either not stay in or have the bearing get destroyed as soon as you press it in. So something that involved that kind of a tolerance. I like the idea of the gears interacting. One of your ideas was to use the EDM to make some gears and to make some true involute gears. So we could actually, I'm coming back to the group project part of it. The problem with the group project part of it is if you guys screw up the sub assembly that gets the bearings, even if you make a good gear, we'll never know. That is the problem with the group part of it. But also, is any group against some sort of a fidgety device? Anybody say we absolutely don't want a fidgety device? Okay. So I think we can say that we're going to make something that we can play with in our hands when it's over. In ME3820 lab right now, they're making fidget devices. And it's one part, one operation. So I think we should make something more complex than that one. Right, but they're just making a piece of aluminum that's got some contours to it. It's got some different. It's actually 4 operations. They do a roughing and then finish passes. And finish passes are just to get different surface texture along the edges of it. So we change the feed rate to make different surface textures. So something more complex than that. So all right, so we're gonna, and I actually think I want to have all the groups make the same thing. That's boring. Is that true? I think we're coming back to the group comes together and makes something, and people make parts of it, but maybe each group could make each part separately. I'm thinking out loud as we go. There's 4 groups, right? So if we do a collaborative kind of a thing, we need to have at least 4 components. So you said you had an idea for a fidget device, or you just had the idea of you wanted the gears to work together? You have an idea of an idea? You want to come up here and draw something for us? Here. Come up here and make a sketch, and then we'll nitpick your sketch. Perfect. Perfect. I like that. That's all right. That's why you're going to engineering school. I'm happy if anybody else has a competitive idea too. What's it do when it's done? What's it going to do when it's done? All right, so hold it in your hand like a lighter. So those would be kind of small then.
Yeah.
So those gears would be like an eighth or a quarter of an inch in diameter.
And you can like spit it on the spit it on the top layer.
Yep. Okay. All right. But you're thinking something that's got like a handle. So so there's a handle component. And does this thing move up and down?
No.
Or it's just it spins. Oh, I see. Other views. So it's like this, and it can rotate around that way from the side. Okay. Yep. So I think I've got something that's coming together here, and I know how it's going to have legacy too. You go sit down. I got it. And it will allow each of the groups to do something individual each week that they then share with the rest of us. And it will allow us to have a legacy at the end of the class. So how to quickly design something and get to the EDM and make it. There's many people at WPI that can do it. We don't actually have a really good canned tutorial for that, right? So if you ask me how to do this, I'm going to say make an appointment with Joel. I'm not going to say go to this web page, read the instructions, and go do it. Right? There's some things that I can just say just go to this web page, read the instructions, do it. But using that EDM is not one of those things that we have. So we could have a group spend a week or two developing that tutorial that then everybody else in the class can go use to make a simple part, maybe like the gears on your thing here, so that at the end we all come together and we can assemble a piece. And at the same time where you're figuring out how to use the EDM, we want to do more complex tool paths on the CNC machines, correct? Right. So there's a couple of things that we could do. We could make a mold and then injection mold some plastic part for some sort of a fidget device. Right. We could do that, or we could CNC machine a complex shape. Right. So we actually do have access to a small injection molding machine that we could use. And I do have some plastic pellets. So we could actually do some small injection molding. which I have never done as part of a class before. In fact, I've never done it before. I've just watched people do it. So I'll be learning too. And so if we did something like making a mold, then you've got to understand how to design that and how to machine it, right? Because they have to have release characteristics and things like that. And then we get some complex tool paths. And I think we're going to have a bearing in our assembly. And so somebody could create a tutorial for how to quickly design and manufacture a pocket that holds a bearing. Right, so I've got EDM, I've got injection molding die, holding a bearing. I'm pointing at groups, but that doesn't mean anything in particular. Right, I'm just thinking we need 4 groups. It's the other thing could be like a 4th axis or a 5th axis component that attaches to it. I think 4th axis is easier for us to do in the short period of time that we have. Because we do 4th axis, we can use the ST30, the live tooling lathe, and not have to learn how to set up the 5th axis in the other machine, which will take half the class. All right. I think I like this idea, but it's not, as I've often said, it's not my MPP, right? It's not my class. So if you had 2 weeks as a group to learn how to do something and create a short tutorial that all the rest of the people in the class could follow. And then from the end of that, we all go through everybody's tutorials. We all make the component and we try to assemble together our fidget device. There's 4 components. How does that sound? Does that sound like a good sort of a group? It's an all together project, but each group is actually making their own thing. It's just that you can't make your thing unless they've done their thing and taught you how to make your thing. I kind of like that. And I think it gives us the ability, well, also, it gets us done with the primary hard part 2 weeks from now, which is then still 3 weeks from the end of the term, right? So if we slip, we've still got time. Yeah.
So I guess
I think at the end, everybody should have the same final product, but the class isn't about making the widget, right? The class is about learning the skills that allow you to make the widget. And if we spend, maybe it's 3 weeks for the first part, maybe it's 2 weeks for the first part of really focusing on one little part of it. So your group is going to focus on one little part of it, be the expert at that one little part, and gain enough knowledge to help the other groups make that one part. And I think we're going to have to make a little tutorial. Then people are going to use the tutorial and you're going to realize that I didn't really explain it at all correctly. And then you're going to update the tutorial. So the group's end product will be the tutorial that can teach people how to do the part of the project that they were in charge of. The other people in the class will be testing whether or not you were any good at teaching them how to do it. And I think if we keep the chunks small enough and simple enough for like the bearing thing, I think that's too simple. But maybe if it's the bearing thing and how to do thread milling so that we have 2 parts that screw together and one of them has a bearing in it, something like that. Because we don't have a really good thread milling tutorial that we can just point people to here on campus. I actually like this. All right, now we have to figure out which group's going to do which thing. So I'm going to get some categories. And we don't have to have the part defined yet, right? All right, so the things we're going to do is EDM to make gears. All right, so one group is going to become the experts at using the EDM to make gears or parts like gears. There's die for injection molding. There's 4-axis turn and I think these are the skills that we want to do. Bearings, thread milling. Yeah, this is basically tolerances. Tolerances and setup. This is mostly going to be setup. Programming. This is going to be design. This will be 3-axis. Does that seem like a good skill set? But if at the end of the class we all have the ability to look at the tutorial and go make an EDM part, or look at the tutorial and make a simple injection molded part, likewise set up the 4th axis. And again, only one group needs to be the expert at it. The other groups just need to be able to follow the instructions. I kind of like this. We'll have to figure out a part. I think we don't need to have the part fully designed in order to start. We do have to arm wrestle to decide which group is going to do which. I think there's a volunteer for the EDM. As soon as I started writing it on the board, they were raising their hands like this. Is there any group that wants to arm wrestle with them to take the EDM away from them? No? I wanted to, we get a big table here. We could sit some chairs. We could arm wrestle. We do 2 out of 3 eliminations. No? I think arm wrestling would be a good skill to learn too. Let's put that on here too. All right. So you're group 1, correct? Group 1. So group 1 is going to be our EDM expert group. Is there, do you guys want to talk amongst yourselves for like a minute and then decide which one you want and then see how many arm wrestling tournaments we need? So group 1, your first task is going to be to make an appointment with Joel and get familiarized with how to use the EDM. And I think you should include the sinker EDM as well as the wire EDM.
Should we have a part, like instead of a part?
Well, so you just need to have you'll need come up with some simple part that could get cut on the EDM for your initial learning how to do it. It doesn't have to be the part that we're going to make for the that's what I think too. Just find it, and it could be a gear. It could be a gear with a hub, right? Because it'd probably need a no, but you may have to finish machine it or something like that to make the hub. Yeah. Joel Harris, but should go nuts, Joel. All right. So group 2, what are you loving? What do you really want to do? Group 2. You group 3. It should have gone 1, 2, 3, shouldn't it? You need to move. Group 2. Is there anybody else that was? All right. We have all 3 of you wanted to do it. This is like figuring out how to design the die, machine the die, and then actually injection mold a piece. And I have never done it before, but I've seen people do it, so I know it's possible. How do we decide? What's your second choice? So group 4 is screwed, huh? I was all right. So what was your second choice? What was your second choice? Nobody wanted to do the easy one? It is the easiest one. All right, we're going to have I don't know that it's the hardest one. All right, who's got the best attention to detail? All right, so if we group 3, what's everybody's confidence at going in the machine shop today and machining a part? If you had to make a part, if I gave you the design and it was a 3-axis part with a pocket, a part where there's a 3-axis pocket, could you just go in there and make it today? Maybe. How about group 4? Could you go in the shop and make a part with a 3-axis cavity in it today? No, you'd have to program it. You have to program it, set it up, and make it. How about you guys? Do you think you could do it? Then they're the most confident. They get the injection molding thing because there's that whole extra component of learning how to do a different machine and learning how to get the draft angles right and all that stuff. And you were the biggest group too, right? Yeah. All right, so you win. But I could see that nobody wanted to do the one that I said was the most easiest. Figuring out how to do bearings and thread milling. I will allow 2 groups to do the 4-axis stuff. One group will do 4-axis on the mill, and one group can do 4-axis on the lathe. So we have 2 machines that can do that. And we'll just make sure that the bearings work. That somebody will figure out the bearing stuff as part of what they're doing. So now, who wants to use the mill turn machine, the 4-axis lathe, and who wants to use the mill to do 4-axis? So to use the mill, you're going to have to, every time you set it up, you're going to have to put the 4th-axis unit in, change the settings to make sure that it's connected. We might even do the 5th axis, but I think 4 is easier. Put it in there, set it up, calibrate it, and then when you're done, take it out because somebody else is going to use the mill, and we don't want them to. 4-axis machining is good. Machining the 4th axis is bad. And I've found that if you leave it in there, people tend to crash into it and machine the 4th axis. So on the lathe, on the other hand, it could take a day just to set it up and not even make a part sometimes. Depends on how many people have touched it since you were last there. So both of them have pluses and minuses. So what are you thinking? All right. Lathe mill. I decided. Turns out I'm like George Bush. I'm the decider guy. I also have to listen to you complain later. So if I decided wrong, I might be screwed. But all right. So I like that. We're going to make 4 components. Those 4 components are going to have to go together. But each group is going to spend the next 2 weeks becoming an expert at making one of the components so they can teach the other groups how to make that component. So for next week at this time, you need to have made something. Does that make sense? So that the week after you can talk about how other people should make it. Or is 2 weeks too short for this segment? Yeah. Oh, we're gonna get to that. We still got almost an hour of class time left. We'll get to what to make. So it's going to be easy to have made something for the EDM group by next week. To have made something for, well, you might have made the mold, but not the injection molded part. But I don't think so. We're going to make a small piece, and I'm going to hook you up with somebody that has done this recently. Probably, if he says yes, he'll help. He does work here at WPI, but he doesn't work for me. I think 3 weeks to get to we've got our tutorial done, but then that'll leave 2 weeks at the end? Is that true? We've got 5 more weeks, something like that. So if we had 2 weeks at the end, everybody's got 3 more pieces to make. I think that'll work. We can schedule that because once you have that tutorial thing, each individual step shouldn't be that hard, especially since you're making the same thing that the other group already made. They should be able to help you through that. All right, so we're going to do 3 weeks for getting the tutorial ready. No, it's about learning how to make the mold. So 4 people will make the mold. I think 4 groups will make the mold. That makes the most sense to me. I think I am, unless you want to. It's possible we're going to go online in a minute here, and we're going to start looking for designs of fidgets that other people have designed and just rip them off. But I think our goal isn't to have the best fidget toy. Our goal is to make engineers who know how to make the components that went into the fidget toy we built. So I think we're going to keep it fairly simple design. And yeah. All right, so if we spend the next 3 weeks getting our thing, I do think next week, though, you should have, if you haven't made an initial part yet, you should have come awfully close to having made an initial part by next week. Because there's going to be some refining the process, and there's going to be some figuring out how to teach people how to do it, part of it. It's all right. So we're going to do 3 weeks to create the tutorial, and then 2 weeks to use the tutorial afterwards. And with any luck, well, at the end of 3 weeks, we should be able to assemble one piece, right? Right, because each group should have made a part. And so we'll see how that goes together. All right, that sounds good. So let's think of what are we going to make then? I do like the idea of gears that interact with each other. Because then on the EDM, we can make the involute gears. So I do like the idea of gears that interact with each other. So put a gear We got a gear, so they'd be the same size. You like different sizes? Okay. Oh, is anybody good at CAD? Anybody in the class good at CAD? Perfect. You'll be our CAD technician for the initial design. Because I'm good at having ideas and sketching them on the board, but I'm not good at CAD, so I'm not going to draw the parts. All right, so we have a couple of gears. So if we're going to have the gears, they have to be held by something, right? What's that? So, all right, so the gears are going to have some sort of a hole. And you'd like that to be a press fit? Oh, I like it. I like it. You're the lathe people, right? I see a keyed shaft coming out of the lathe. I like that. What's that? So, all right, but if we're going to use a keyed shaft to hold our gear, so it's easy for you to make the hub with a little bump in it in the EDM. But what keeps the gears from coming off? Oh, I like it. We put threads. We put threads on our shaft that we can screw a cap into. What holds the shaft on the other side? Yeah, well, it's because we're thinking, and we've only got 2 dimensions here, right? So if we've got our gears here, well, I guess they interact with each other, right? We've got our gears here, and we've got a shaft, or we've got a hole in it, and then there's a shaft that goes through it. So this side of it could be threaded and have a cap that goes over it to keep the gear from coming off the top, and they'd be interchangeable. You could unscrew it and you could take the gear off and put it somewhere else. But here, it has to attach to something, right? Yep. I like a bearing here. And this is something. So this came off the lathe, right? This came off the EDM. So this has to, you're probably not going to press a bearing into an injection molded part. So this has to be your 4th axis mill part. So it's got to have some shape that's hard to make. Does it have to be hard to make with 2 axes? It just has to be possible to make with 4 axes. Right? It doesn't actually have to be hard to make with 2 axes. I like the idea of taking round stock here and making it into a hex in the 4th axis. And that one of the sides of the hex is relieved and has the bearings. I don't know. I'm thinking it's going to be an awkward fidget toy. It might not be a fidget toy. It might just be a widget, not a fidget. What are we going to injection mold? I have an idea, but I want to see what everybody else has. Okay. Little feet for the quad bathtub. So the same thing he said. Oh, to make a handle that goes around it. I think that's going to be beyond our injection molding skill in 3 weeks. I agree. I don't hate your idea, but I think I worked on a project that was trying to do that before, and they never succeeded. And they were pretty smart kids. So I'm going to say we're going to skip that one. But I like your idea, and I agree that would be a good thing. But like a little stand, little feet to put it on, would get us to injection mold a small part that could then go around the thing. And I like the idea of having multiples of the same part that it stands on, because then you can pull the handle on the injection molder more than once. Unfortunately, it's not a computer-controlled injection molder. It is manual, pull the handle. But I kind of like that. All right, so you're going to make the base thing. It may or may not be this hex shape, but what it could have is a bunch of holes on the bottom that your injection molded pieces press into. That for assembly purposes, you stick that in there and it presses in, and you're making the shaft. Should we do it? We could do a hex shaft instead of a keyed shaft. I kind of like the hex shaft, but threaded on the end, and the cap that threads on. So you're going to make a hex shaft, and you're going to cut threads on both the ID and the OD of a part that have to work together. Because that is something that people struggle with here at WPI often, is making threads that are the right size. So I like that. And so you get some skills at setting up the 4-axis lathe, at making this hex shape. And the hex shape doesn't have to, the hex shape just has to be where the bearing goes. Or sorry, where the gear goes. All right, so I like that. We may have to meet to actually design these parts. Is anybody that's really good at design besides our CAD technician volunteer? All right, let's the three of us meet. We have some time. Probably can't do later today, but I can do early tomorrow. We have some time tomorrow morning. But I think all the groups can get started learning how to do the thing they want to do without having the final design for the part, because we've got an idea of what the part's going to look like. And then let's get some final design for the part by tomorrow afternoon. It'll be simple parts. I like this. I'm actually excited about the project now. Is anybody else excited about the project? You guys have varying degrees of excitedness in your facial expressions. You know what else I'm excited about? I think we're done for today. Unless somebody has more that they want to talk about right now. Yes. Yeah, oh yeah, everybody should make sure you're a basic user. But if you were a basic user last year, you still are. We didn't update it this year. So if you did the basic user test last year, you don't have to do it again this year. If you did it 2 years ago, you have to do it again. But not if you did it last year. Yes. Too many chefs stirring the pot is, I think, the root cause of the failure. No, the sponsor of the project kept changing the requirements. No, but it was, we talked about the process of doing it. I think it was more complex than we can do with the simple injection molding machine that we have here. It needed so it wasn't really the group. It was really understanding what they were struggling with in their part and knowing what the equipment we have access to use here, I think it's be hard because they were using outside vendor. So they weren't even doing the injection molding. They were just designing the parts to fit together, and the vendor had trouble. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast.